got nothing to do with, well, I have nothing to say. It's got to do with increasing your accessibility to be connected with other educators. You guys have, so like in California, we have CA Ed Chats. We have a California Ed Chat. You guys have an Ed Chat here?
We do.
What is it? Oh, this is another reason why you want to be on Twitter. Go for it.
It's NH Ed.
NH Ed. So I've had the privilege of keynoting a lot of other ISTE affiliates, and I'm noticing that the state Ed Chats, I don't know of a state that doesn't have them. And it's really cool for those of you that aren't on Twitter. It's cool because what day of the week do you do it?
Sunday evening, 7 to 8 p.m.
Sunday evening, 7 to 8. So like California Ed Chat is Sunday evening, 8 to 9, which I don't participate in the fall because of Sunday night football, but that's another story. Actually, sometimes I do. But anyway, the reason why I'm saying that, and then I'll get into the session, is that those Ed Chats are phenomenal opportunities for you to connect with other educators in the state because it's usually centered around a topic that is relevant to your state. So, just something to consider. All right, my favorite session. No reaction at all? Okay. So, this session is strictly on the visuals. Visual literacy, in fact, the title, visual storytelling, cinematic narrative. And yes, there is a difference between digital storytelling and cinematic narrative, but you will see all of it. I love doing this session. We're going to use every minute of the whole hour, but it's going to be fun. And then at the end, some of the exercises that I will have all of you go through at the end, there will be a link to a PDF resource that I painstakingly put together for hours and hours and hours because I knew if I did it once, then I would only have to go in and make adjustments along the lines. And it's about building an observational literacy. But we're going to go through several of those exercises first anyway. So to start off, I want to share with all of you a trailer. Exactly are we going to go through? All this is about storytelling, visual. Everything you see on this slide are what I call weapons of story. In the hands of a student or of us, we have the ability to tell our own stories. If you piggyback on what I shared this morning in the keynote, you should be telling your stories, you should be showing your work. In fact, what I used to always tell my students is the following. When you get older, you're going to go for a job. If I were to Google your name, what am I going to find? The more you put out your stories, the less I'm going to find something negative about you, unless I go all the way to page 4, 5, or 6, which means I'm not going to find it. You want to tell your story and not have someone else tell it for you, because then you have control over it. And that goes to my philosophy on, you all probably heard the statement, oh, well, the kids, they just know how to use it nowadays. That doesn't mean I know how to use it effectively and appropriately and responsibly, but I do want them showing their work. So what I want to do is build a foundation of what it means to visually tell stories. So like I said, I got the 3 major areas which I will juxtapose the difference. Visual storytelling, digital storytelling, cinematic narrative. The bottom line with all of this is literacy. And so I mentioned it yesterday during the search session. To me, the simple definition of literacy is effective communication. That's it. However you do that, whether it's through visuals, through writing in text, through audio, doesn't matter. It's, are you effectively communicating? So, visuals are far more important. So I'm going to tell you all a story. Back in medieval times, or slightly later than that, in the United Kingdom, there was a guy that loved playing cards. Did it every day with his friends. And usually he would do it while he was eating food. His favorite food was usually meat with wrapped meat around cheese to eat it. And then he realized that the oil from the meat was getting on his cards. So in turn he decided, well, what would happen if I put the meat in between two pieces of bread, and now I can eat my food while I'm playing cards. That is a story of John Montague, the 4th Earl of Sandwich. If I were to ask any of you a year from now, what do you remember about the sandwich? Between that visual and what I just told you, most of you will be able to retain most of what I just shared. Due in no small part to having a visual cue that represents it. And that's why visually we can tell stories far more effectively and far faster than we can with any other means. In fact, your eyes are the reason why you are able to interpret information significantly faster, interpret stories significantly faster, and then in turn, the added layer to that is what happens to our brains when we tell or listen to stories. Okay? You're activating more neurons in your brain through storytelling. That's why if you ever watch or observe a conversation between two people, it is not a sentence, a sentence, a sentence, a sentence. What it is, a narrative, then a narrative, then a narrative. Most of the more compelling talks that you've heard, hopefully mine too, involve a lot of storytelling. Okay? The problem is we're not using enough visuals, and what will happen, especially with the students, is you will see something like that, which is a big no-no. In fact, I used to tell my students that if you design presentations and you have bullet points, then you're not going to effectively communicate. It's not being literate. In fact, just print it out and give it to me and I'll read it myself later. Okay? You're taking the storytelling element out of the equation. And so ultimately, again, there are, the main thing is that we like to hear stories. It's in our DNA. In fact, all you really need for storytelling is a campfire and a circle. That's it. Okay? But now, in the digital age, with the accessibility of all the technologies we have, and especially with our phones, we now have the ability to tell more stories visually than we used to. Okay? So, storytelling, story listening, and so then that leads me to the next thing, which is what I call the digital age literacy. So for me growing up, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, there's more to it than just that. There's what I call, yesterday I covered information literacy, and today in this is media literacy. What is my equipment that I'm going to use? How can I most effectively tell that story? And then adding layers onto it, which you will see. It's not just the visual at some point. When I get into digital storytelling and cinematic narrative, I have to have an auditory literacy as well. Choosing the right sound and the right music that helps tell the story. Y'all ever seen a movie where the music just doesn't fit the mood? You know, like if it's a love story and two people, you know, like the guy or the gal is pouring their heart out, you don't want to listen to any heavy metal during that time. It makes no sense. It's not being media literate. All right? So, the three major areas to cover: visual storytelling, which involves still imagery; digital storytelling, which is pictures in motion, not motion picture, okay? And then finally, cinematic narrative. And within all of these, I will go through elements of differentiation. Now, here's my definition of differentiation. Increasing the complexity relative to the content. Okay? Increasing complexity relative to content. How does that work? Here's an example. The difference between Gilligan's Island and Lost. Okay, that's one. Or, are you smarter than a fifth grader and Jeopardy? That's differentiation to me. Increasing complexity relative to the content. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go into visual storytelling. And again, I mentioned how your eyes are. You all know that you have more nerve connections between your eyes and your brain than any other sense. You don't know that? How many science teachers in the room? Biology especially? No? Yeah, you do. Okay, and that's part of the reason why we're able to interpret things more visually. So, here's an example. What do you see here? Looks nice, doesn't it? Beautiful. So beach in Australia actually. That water looks inviting, doesn't it? Especially now. Okay? I'm visually telling you a story. There's more layers to this story that you're about to get. That beautiful beach has signs like this. Okay? So, present in this water are all of the following: marine stingers, crocodiles. So if you don't get stung by a jellyfish and you don't get eaten by a crocodile, you're going to end up slipping on the rocks and breaking your neck. Okay? Okay? That's a sign. They're visually telling us a story, visually communicating something in that. However, you get this sign too. Can anyone tell me what those mean? Well, for me it was, no cats and dogs are allowed, which means I can bring a kangaroo out there, because that doesn't say no kangaroo. And if you look at that sign, I've heard any and all of the following with that sign. Don't feed the kangaroo, don't give the kangaroo your ice cream cone, and don't shoot the kangaroo. That right there is what I call bad visual literacy, or bad communication visually, because it's not clear. This one is clear. This one is not. All right? And then, of course, you get the stingers where it's like, okay, watch out because you'll lose your shorts. Okay? Bad communication. Visually. All right, so what I would like for all of you to do is go to this website, which is a Google form. I'll give you a moment. And what's going to happen is I'm going to display a series of images. They'll stay up for 1 minute. Please complete the form in that time period. Believe it or not, 1 minute is plenty of time. And you'll see once you go to that form, there's two things. One, you're going to get an idea of the types of observational questions that I will ask. And then number two, when you submit it, there should be a link for you to do another submission and just wait for the next image. So there's going to be 3 images that will come up. Everybody good to go?
No.
No? 1 minute. It's not, it may seem like a lot, but once we're going through the process that if we had all day, we would be breaking down each image and you would see that it really isn't, it's not a lot. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at the image, look at the whole image, identify what story is being told, and look at all the different parts and details to that story. We good now? Yes? Who is not? Okay. We're doing okay for time. So. Thank you. All right. Okay, so 1 minute. Each image is going to pop up. Do not worry about Ken and the time. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to work your way down each of those questions. But what I recommend you do, this is what I tell the students do, take the first 30 seconds to just look. What do you see? What story is going on? Who are the players? In some cases, who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist? And no, it does not necessarily have to be a physical human being. And how are the details in each image? Then go ahead and answer it, and then by then we'll go to the next one. 1 minute is an eternity for this. Remember, you're using your eyes, which means you're able to do all these things faster as well. All right, so first image. Next image. Don't worry, if you don't get to all of it, it's okay. It's the first time doing this, it's totally fine. Next image. Okay, we'll go into an analysis, but we all want to go ahead and no, we're going to go into an analysis. We just did the three today. Okay, everybody ready? All right, so let's do an analysis of what we're looking at. So, in this case, your submission for any of the following time flies, time moves, litter game, McDonald's garbage, main characters, chess pieces, wow, nice, kids. Okay, so what you've done here is you have done an analysis of this particular image that you've done an analysis of an image that I have created that you have no background story or any background information. It was solely based on you interpreting what you're seeing, your title it, who are the characters in it, what are the details in it. So now here's a backstory. That image was made at ISTE when it was in Philadelphia a number of years ago on a photo walk that I led with one of my colleagues. And so one of the things that I used to always tell adults and students when you go on a photo walk or you're out doing something creative, by the way, creative activities are therapeutic. You must take the time to do something like that, whether it's photography for me, cooking, sewing, anything. You've got to give yourself that time to allow your mind to be freely, do whatever it is you like to do that takes you away from some of the everyday grinds that we have. But at any rate with this, the backstory to this is that some of the teachers that were with us didn't know what to photograph. And I said, in many cases, you need to just observe and listen to your surroundings. Granted, it's mostly with the eyes, but sometimes even the ears. And then this image revealed itself to where I titled this image Uber Consumerism. Because what you have is you have the McDonald's trash. No, I did not place it there. And you have McDonald's in the background, and you have the chessboard, or the game. Because ultimately, it's all a game to get us to consume fast food. And there is another component to this story, which I'll show you a platform that I use for that. There's a YouTube video that in 2 minutes shows how much trash one individual gets by getting a single Happy Meal, or a sandwich, fries, and a drink. And the other added element to even this is that, did you all know that every single day, McDonald's feeds 1% of the world's population? Every day. So if you were to go on Google and do a search, world's population, you'll get a number, and then do that times 1% every single day. And that YouTube video is pretty telling in regards to how much trash one person generates from a sandwich, fries, and a drink. So anyway, that's that image. The next one. We have the time, I'll go back to your submissions. But so this is Venice Beach, California. This is a skate park. Again, one of those things where if you allow the image to reveal itself, what you will see are the following. So all the elements are, you have skaters, you're at the beach. Anyone want to guess what time of day this is? Well, it's definitely after school. Right, you hope it's after school. You notice anything about, do you see any shadows? Probably about 5 o'clock. Good guess. It was actually in the afternoon. Good guess. Okay. What I like about this is, my guess is you all first looked at the skater in the air. Did you notice the other elements of the story? Did you notice any other elements to the story like the following? See these guys right here? What do you think they're doing? Celebrating who? Yeah, a pound, that's right. Okay, this guy's watching him. What's this guy doing? He's on his phone, that's right. Okay, all of those are elements to the story. And the reason why I point those out is if I were to do this in writing, and I were to say, hey, it's a skater at a skate park, it's late in the afternoon, he's jumping in the open space, and that was it. As a teacher, you would say, no, I need more details. Those are your details to the story. Time of day, what's going on, who are the characters, and what's their relationship with each other. Now, this is a cool one, too. So this one was on a bridge in Frankfurt, Germany. And so let me qualify some of this by sharing with all of you. Part of my encouragement for doing creative things like photography is that I'm a staunch believer in avoiding the whole digital citizenship challenge by authoring and creating your own content that you then can use. So for example, in the keynote this morning, every single image you saw was mine. That's why you don't see citations, and I don't have to worry about it because I own it. Same thing here. And so with kids, with our students, and even you, if you know you're going to be doing something in which it's either a presentation, a film, anything along those lines, the more you can author and create your own content, the less you have to deal with copyright, and you know what else you're doing? Something creative. So in this case, this is Frankfurt, Germany. It's a bridge. You all know about the bridge in Paris? That's right. They put locks on it. You hear what happened to it? So what happens is, it's a pont des Arts. It's a bridge in Paris where somebody decided that they wanted to show their true love, so they took a lock and it had their names engraved on it, and they locked it on the bridge. And everyone started doing that. Well, that bridge in Paris, their locks got so heavy that it buckled. Yes. So now, the reason why I got this is that is starting to spread throughout Europe. So this is in Germany. You got locks, but what you don't totally see in this is the following. And here's the story. Let me zoom in on it. Okay? examining a lock to put it on the bridge, locking it in, and finally, we're in love. It's hard to see the sequence, but that's examining a lock, locking it in, we're in love. Okay? Now, did I tell all of them to stand there so that I can get that photo? No. A lot of times with things like visual storytelling and things of that nature, it's a function of taking your time and allowing the story to reveal itself. It's no different than what I used to tell my students is that if you ever get this thing called writer's block, go for a walk. Blood flowing, oxygen in your brain, get your mind off of it, eventually the story will reveal itself to you. And in this case, it's a function of being observational so that you do not, you don't find it, you let it reveal itself to you. So I'm going to read this to you all, and so those are elements of a singular image that has a story in it. And you went through one observational exercise, and that is identifying the titling the image, identifying who the characters are, what are the details, i.e. what's going on. So in this case, this is a precursor to using a single image as a writing prompt for a story. So 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000, every year the miles add up. It seems that whenever I'm writing on one of these people movers, I get just enough time to reflect on my hectic and fast-paced schedule. I spend lots of time traveling. I have seen and experienced many things most people only get in a book or a television program. Of course, all of this comes at a cost. The cost is not measurable in miles, money, or any other numerical measurement. I've come to realize that this hallway is a microcosm of my life. Because I travel so much, I am constantly in motion, both coming and going. This coming and going is affected so many things that are not immediately visible. I have missed birthdays, performances, sporting events, and the joys of everyday family life. In fact, as I stand on this walkway, I can't help but think I'm nothing more than a shadow of myself at home. Airports, generally, can be quite sterile and nondescript. I think this is due in large part to the massive volume of people that move through these spaces daily, yet there are no remnants of their being. The only meaningful connections that occur on a daily basis are from one flight to the next. Each morning there is a mix of the new and the experience, yet nothing of their existence remains in place. How much of my existence remains in place at home beyond the family photos on the mantle? Sometimes we don't know where our journeys will take us, but one thing is certain, without leaving footprints of life, we're never more than just a shadow and a distant memory. That is a story based on that image prompt. Bonus points if anyone can guess where that is. Say it again.
Underneath the airport in Chicago.
Bingo. That's O'Hare. So that's an example of, okay, so what is the story in the image? You saw the story, you read the story to you, now you see the image. In many cases, using images as a story prompt for students is another example of building an observational literacy. So the first exercise you all went through is caption or title, what are the characters, what are the details, and in some cases, what is the relationship to that? The next is turning that image into an actual story. So the first step is to build that observational literacy of being able to see things, and then taking those pieces and then weaving those into an actual story. Here's another example of visual storytelling, and that is doing something that's called a diptych. Can you all see the two different images there? If not, there you go. That's the demarcation. That's another example of visual literacy, visual storytelling, and in this case, there's two parts to it. There's two images. Okay? How about a triptych? Can you tell what the story is there? Could be lunch. What if one of our students were telling this story? It would probably be like this. And those are malasadas, which are Portuguese donuts. So, one of the platforms that you have to be able to differentiate your visual storytelling is a website like this called ThingLink. How many of you are familiar with ThingLink? Oh, good. Those of you that aren't, it essentially gives you a platform to annotate images so that what you just did on that form, you can actually do on the website itself. You upload an image, you can tag certain parts of the image, and you can even embed YouTube videos, and yes, there is an iPad app for it. I personally love ThingLink. I used that at one point. I had students using that all the time, even for their own images. I said, I want you to break down what you saw before you push that shutter release on that camera. And part of that leads me to the next thing I'll share is there's a difference between picture taking and picture making. Okay? Picture taking means that I have my camera and I push a shutter release and I get a whole bunch of photos and I get 100 of them and I hope and I pray one of them is good. Picture making is allowing the image to, the story to reveal itself. I have an understanding, media literacy, of how to use my camera, and that every time I push that shutter release, I know that that is a good story being told in that image. And instead of 100, maybe I only have 3, but I have 3 really good ones to work with. Because I took the time to allow the story to reveal itself, and I have a media literate component to understand how to use the equipment in the first place. Okay? ThingLink is one of your platforms in which you can do what we just did in that Google form in a web-based platform that is now publishable. All right? So, the quote for you. And the key word in this quote is that right there. Not passive, active. So, digital storytelling. Pictures in motion. How many of you are familiar or have heard the term digital storytelling? Probably everyone. One. All right. So, digital storytelling, the main definition of digital storytelling is storytelling through means of which you are using some sort of a digital device. Well, guess what? All of them are digital. So, in this case, I identify digital storytelling as pictures in motion. Okay, you get pictures, put them together, maybe you have a soundtrack, it records your voice, and you go from there. All right? So, here's an example of a digital story, and I'll ask you what the story is about afterwards. Digital storytelling, wonderful. The process, ultimately publishing of a book. I really wish search stories were still around. I don't know, did any of you ever do that? Oh, it was so cool. Typical of Google, they take away the good stuff. Okay, so what are the key elements to digital storytelling? There are the following. Getting a topic, identifying your content for that topic. Here's one that the kids hate, but I'm going to tell you a secret with that. Storyboarding, then producing, and then evaluating. And I left this blank on purpose because this is a pop quiz for all of you. What should go here after you evaluate it? Say it louder.
Publish.
Publish. Bingo. So, here's how you can get the kids with storyboarding. Say you develop, you get a topic, you organize your content, storyboarding. They're going to say, I hate storyboarding, I don't want to do it. No problem. Just go ahead and do the best you can. They'll storyboard. What I used to do was the following. Let's say these two are working together and these two are working together. Guess what I do? Give me your storyboard and I'm going to give it to them to make your story, and your grade depends on how well they make your story. Guess what will usually happen? They want that storyboard back. Because a storyboard, growing up where I grew up and being able to do some of the things I was able to do before I got into education, I worked in front and behind the camera. I know how critical storyboarding is. because storyboarding is the visual cues for the director to interpret the script. They don't read the script and then set up the camera. The script supervisor makes sure that the script is adhered to. The storyboard is what the director is using as their basis for composing of a shot. So that, arguably, is the most critical element, because that is where you are visually communicating what you want to end up visually in the finished product. That's one trick to do that. How do students do it? Trade out those storyboards and watch how fast they all of a sudden want to change it up. Do you have to be a skilled artist to be a good storyboarder? No. All you have to do is visually represent what you want composed in camera, or in this case in the digital story. So here's a digital story on Peter the Great. Make a mental note while you're watching how meticulously each frame was composed, the narration, and then the added element, the music.
This is a brief history of Peter the Great. Peter was born to a Russia that was feudal, isolated, highly traditional. Peter grew to be 6 feet 8 inches tall, much taller than the average Russian. Russian cities of that era were dirty and full of drunken peasants. Peter's older half-sister, Sophia, ruled as regent for several years. Peter wed Eudoxia in an arranged marriage in 1689. In an effort to free himself of both women, Peter had been sent to a convent. Peter married his great love, Catherine I, in 1707. Peter and his wives had a total of 14 children. Only 3 of whom survived to adulthood. Peter traveled to Western Europe, where he learned many trades, including shipbuilding. Peter greatly admired Western military capabilities. He admired Western women as well. Peter's reforms included merit-based advancement. He forced men to cut their beards or pay a beard tax. Many traditional Russians did not support Peter's reforms, of which freedom of expression was not one. In the process of building St. Petersburg in 1721, an estimated 100,000 people died from poor working conditions and disease. Peter died in 1725 of a gangrenous bladder. He left behind a modernized Russia.
So, you all notice each scene, meticulously put together, narration, very smooth and relaxing. Teachers tend to be able to do that when we read, okay? And you notice the music. Was the music appropriate? Yeah, that's a very well-designed visual story right there, okay? I now know about Peter the Great with no problem, and that was in 90 seconds, okay? Here's another one that was put together by a very close friend of mine, Chrissy Van Osdale, about the election, most recent elections, that she did with her kids, another version of a digital story.
30,000 kids, 50 states, and it all started with just one tweet. While students researched elections, the power of social media spread the word for our project. Google Docs tracked participants, and on election day, while the nation voted for president, our kids cast their votes too. Kids gathered votes, analyzed data, created digital graphs, developed our blog and website throughout the day. Kids were so excited that we even had our own hashtag. Our classroom was transformed into an election headquarters that rivaled even CNN as we Skyped live with other classes that were voting too. It was a day of learning powered by technology and student collaboration.
See how the narration was going with the images and supported it, the music. Now we know a whole story of how she had her students involved in the most recent election, which I've even asked her, I'm like, I want to know how many of those kids are going to be more socially and politically involved because of that experience right there. That, yes, rival CNN. Okay? So, that's another example of a digital story. Again, it's having a story and framing it in a manner of which the visuals, the audio supports the visuals. Okay, not the other way around. Okay? Here's another example of one, and what I will ask all of you on this one is to just yell out a title once you see the end. I want you to see this.
Nobody knows, I'm gonna race you down. Calories and donuts? Shotguns down the beaten path, one step to the right, three to the left. The moon's so high, the wind's so fast, makes us feel like goddesses. 1, 2, 3, set, ready, set, go, mayhem. Gotta be the first time we're gonna run like bandits, wild language chasing, racing, 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 racing. Oh, I'm gonna race you back home. Oh, oh,
What would you all title that?
Transformation.
Say it again.
Transformation.
Transformation, I love it. Yes. You all see the story arc there? Okay? So, and then the last digital story, so this is one that not only amazed me, I challenged several of my students when I was in the classroom to create a digital story that's comparable to this. And I don't want to give it away because I'll ask all of you, what book is this from at the end?
Most of the big shore places were closed now. There were hardly any lights, except the shadowy, moving glow of a ferry boat across the sea. And as the moon rose higher, the inessential houses began to melt away. Until gradually, I became aware of the old island here, that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes. A fresh green breast of the New World. Its vanished trees had once pandered in whispers to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent. Face to face, for the last time in history, with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. F. Scott Fitzgerald.
What's the book? Say it again. The Great Gatsby. That's right. Imagine if instead of doing popcorn reading, you were to have your students go online and find freely available stock video footage, choose an excerpt out of their favorite book or book you're reading, and do that exact same thing. How would that be different? That would be differentiating simply reading. I asked students, I said, you got two choices in English class, because at the time the English teacher was it was still a friend of mine, but he was not, he left the school a couple of years after, before I did. I said, let's try something. I said, I want you to give the kids the following options. Do a 3-page book report, choose a segment out of the book, and narrate it to a video that is appropriate for that section, going back to media literacy, or produce a 90-second book talk. You all know about book talks? You know what book talks are? Okay, who does not? Okay, so a book talk, essentially the way we did it, a book talk was essentially a 90-second commercial about a book. So that I read a book, and I'm going to produce a 90-second commercial about it, which means I have to know about the book because I'm trying to sell the book, that then gets posted online. And what we did was in the library, we posted QR codes so that you could go in the library, scan it with your phone, and you could watch a book talk that one of your classmates has probably produced about why you should be reading that book that's literally right in front of you. Guess which one most of them chose? The book talk. Guess what was second? That right there. I don't know why, but they didn't want to do the writing. They want to do the visuals, okay? So now, the difference between digital storytelling and cinematic narrative. Pictures in motion versus motion picture. And I'll go out on a limb and guess that more than half of you looked at that first. Okay? Because we can contextually identify with that movement versus that movement. Okay? So, cinematic narrative. So again, the eyes have it with cinematic narratives. We love film, we love television, we like watching things, we like watching movies in which compelling stories are told. It's a fact. Even bad movies still get a lot of people to watch them because that's what we like to do. So, going back to the book talk, which one is harder? 3-page book report or a 90-second book talk? Which one requires more steps? The 90-second book talk, because you must do all the following. You have to have a topic, the book. You have to write a treatment. Did anyone here, you all know what a treatment is? Okay, so a treatment, okay, so every script that goes through Hollywood, before it gets greenlit, it goes through this process. You gotta have a treatment. Treatment is essentially a synopsis of what the story is gonna be. Okay, and it has to be 1 page. Okay, you cannot register a script with the Writers Guild of America unless you have a treatment that supersedes the script. You have to, okay? Then you gotta script it. Yes, I would have the students write scripts in the exact same required format that the Writers Guild had. Courier new font, 10-point is the max. You have to use center justification for all dialogue with the characters and things of that nature. There's a whole lot of terminology, slug line, different camera shots, but the main thing was they had to do it exactly aligned with what the Writers Guild of America's requirements are. Part of my point in doing that was where my former school was located. Within a 4-mile radius, you had 6 different studios, including NBC, Paramount, CBS, Disney, all right there. So yes, a lot of my students were in movies and television. How many of you all saw the Transformers movies? Okay, every classroom scene filmed in that was filmed at my former school. Malcolm in the Middle, anything that was filmed in a school, that was at my school. So it made sense for me to incorporate elements of things like this into the curriculum. So anyway, once you get your script, you got to storyboard it, all important, produce it, evaluate it, and then of course there should be another post-it note right here saying publish. All right. So, here are your 4 stages of production. Pre-production, production, post-production, evaluation. Anyone recognize those 4 on the right? Big question, observation, analysis, conclusion. Scientific method. Bingo. There is a scientific process to storytelling, especially cinematic narratives. So if someone says, oh, you're just making movies. Nope. We're following the scientific method to tell stories. Okay? Now, here's your terminology. To Kill a Mockingbird. Every shot is the equivalent of a sentence. Every scene the equivalent of a paragraph. Every sequence a chapter. Movie is enough. So, given this, I want to show you what I identify as a typical home movie. I'll spare you. How many shots are in that? 1. That is the equivalent of a run-on sentence. Visually. That's number 1. Number 2, what time of day is it? Let's just say daytime. What's going on? Not much, exactly. What do we have? We have a writer just going around, the guy's filming it, it's raw, it's real, okay? The only thing worse with this would have been, you all familiar with what's called vertical video syndrome? Okay, let me show you something. That is making a home movie. That is telling a cinematic narrative. Do not have vertical video syndrome. If you YouTube it, you'll see a lot of really, really bad cinematic narratives told, due in no small part to that versus that. This is a home movie, this is your filmmaker. Okay? So, in this instance, there ain't much to the story. The kid riding around, his buddy filmed him, they threw on some cool music, there's one shot, that's it. Okay? Now, changing the perspective doesn't necessarily change the story.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, wait for it. Oh, wait for it. Here it comes. That's cool, isn't it? What's the story? There isn't one. That's right. It's still another bike. It's still another bike. There is no story being told. Yes, it's cool, but that's still not a story. Where are we? Desert, maybe the mountains, but desert, okay. Okay, what time of day is it? Daytime. Okay, but that's really all you got. You don't know who the rider is, you don't know anything about him. You know he's on a bike, just like before. Okay, but there's only one shot. Another run-on sentence, that's what it is. Because you change a perspective doesn't mean it becomes a story. Yes, it's very cool, but it's not a story. Now, I will show you this one. That's a story. So, let's take a look real quick. For one, based on even just that alone, can you tell where it might be located? Europe. Why did you guess Europe? Inspired, familiarity with the architecture. It's actually in Scotland, so very good guess. What time of day is it? Could be dusk or dawn. We don't know yet. Okay? That gives you kind of sort of a clue, except there's another clue coming up. Okay? Introduction of our character, and oh, now you know for sure what time of day it is because going to work. Okay? That right there is called foreshadowing. I'm introducing what we find out later is the antagonist. Okay? You don't know yet. I'm foreshadowing. I'm planting in your head an element to the story that will reveal itself eventually. Okay? See that? Tickets and regulations. What does a biker do? He yanks the sign out. Okay? Now, do we like him? Not necessarily. We could, maybe. He's a rebel because he's violating something. He's saying, tickets and regulations, yeah, I'm going to take the sign out. Don't care. Okay? Then he goes up, falls down. Okay? Right now, it's like, yeah, whatever. You're a bad guy. You pulled the sign out. Except now, we're introducing something that now will elicit sympathy and empathy for what he's trying to do because he's risking death. Okay? Falls down again. See, he falls differently this time. Okay? Now, you see that? Disappointment. I'm a failure, but I will continue to try. Okay? Then we get more elements of his bike as far as the size of the tires. Okay? And then finally, accomplishment. And then now we shift to a different scene. Okay? That's a story. All of those things that I'm sharing with you, your brain is already processing all that without someone sitting next to you telling you all the details to it. If that were a script, this would be the start of it. All right? Now, how many of you all saw Monsters, Inc.? One of my favorite movies, okay? Watch this. Let me back up. First of all, where are we? In a city. What time of day is it? How do you know it's morning? The light. Guess what? See what's happening right there? I can honestly tell all of you, if you ever see an animated film in which birds are flying across the screen, it's the morning. Always. Okay? More information. We're in the city. What time of year is it? How do you know? That's right. Now, let's keep going. When does that occur? In the morning. That's right. Character introduction. Where are they going? See, all of those things, visually, our brain is interpreting so it makes sense. We don't need someone to tell us it's the morning, birds are flying across, the paper's delivered, Mike and Sully are headed to work carrying their lunch pails. All of that are elements to the visual part of the story. And that is why you go back to that graphic. You have to have different shots that make up a scene, which is the paragraph, which paragraphs make up a sequence, which a sequence makes a series of sequences make a movie. You cannot have one shot, and with students, a lot of times they just grab a camera and film. Got to have a visual wherewithal to understand what story am I telling? And then the other element to this is that there are 4 components to even this. It used to be a standard formula in Hollywood. And it used to be establishing shot, long shot, medium shot, close-up. Establishing tells you where you are, what time of day it is, and just gives you some contextual reference. Long shot gives you more information about it, like we know it's a morning in a city, but now we know exactly where in the city, as well as the time of year it is. Medium shot, the doorway, introduction to the characters, and then if I kept going, you would get a close-up, you get more detail about those characters. Establishing, long, medium, close-up. Those are your 4. with that. So we don't run out of time, I want to share a quote with you. How much time do I have on my hour already? All right, I'll zip through this last little part. So anyway, here's an example of another one, sequential story. What if my assessment were on atmospheric sciences? And this is what I can do. I can either do a bulleted list on a slide, or, have you all seen this one? Oh, you got it, okay. I'm sorry I'm running over. This is so, okay, you got to see some of the videos.
Give me a second, I need to get my story straight. My friends are in the bathroom, getting higher than the Empire State. My mother, she's waiting for me just across the bar. My seat's been taken by the sunglasses, asking about a scar. I know I gave it to you months ago. I know you're trying to forget, but you didn't do some things. The holes in my heart, I'm trying hard to take it back, so if by the time
all systems are go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, I know that I'm not on it, you're right. Like I said, I just thought maybe we could find a ways to fall apart. But our friends are bad, so let's raise a tide. 'Cause I found someone to carry me by the time the bar closes and you feel like falling down, I'll carry you home tonight.
So, I'm sorry, I'll move on. So there is an example of, I want the kids to do an assessment on their atmospheric science study. A slide in PowerPoint with a bunch of bullet points, or tell me a story about Hello Kitty going into space. You all notice all the measurements? Okay, that was actually a school in out in California, in Lake Tahoe. So ultimately, in the end, because of our access to and use of digital technologies, a lot of the stories that we can tell, that we want our students to tell, are only possible because of that. The key is the publication aspect of it. And so, with that being said, storytelling is definitely a thing that is ingrained in our DNA, and the more that we can invoke ways in which kids can tell stories, even as forms of assessment, whether it's a cinematic narrative, a visual story, or even just simply a visual story, that's ultimately what we want to do. So, your starting point is identifying what the story is, then the mechanism by which you want to tell it, and That is the web address to the PDF, where it literally has elements of what you all did earlier about building and observational literacy and a whole lot of other stuff. And I know I'm over time, I apologize. And if you didn't get it, you can always just email me. And with that, I will say that's the end of my story. Thank you.